Is she worth the 10 years, Kevin? Or just the promotion? I didn't say it out loud. I couldn't. My voice was trapped somewhere between my lungs and the lump of cold lead in my throat. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, looking down at the gala floor. The anniversary ball, Kevin had called it. He told me it was a celebration of a decade of marriage and his hard work. But as the clock struck 8, the exact hour we had exchanged vows 10 years ago, I wasn't looking at my husband. I was looking at a betrayal so cinematic it felt fake. There he was, tucked into a private alcove with Cassandra, the CEO of his firm. His hand wasn't on her shoulder in a professional thank you. It was buried in her hair. And then he leaned in, a deep, lingering kiss that tasted of champagne and the destruction of my entire life. I felt my knees buckle. The expensive silk of my dress felt like sandpaper against my skin. I needed to scream. I needed to run down there and throw my glass of red wine right into her perfectly contoured face. But I was paralyzed. I turned to bolt toward the exit, my vision blurring with hot, stinging tears, when a hand clamped firmly around my upper arm. It wasn't a violent grab. It was steady, anchoring. "Stay calm, Megan," a low, gravelly voice whispered right into my ear. I spun around, ready to lash out, but I stopped dead. It was a man I didn't recognize. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, but his eyes had the cold, sharp look of a hunter. He didn't let go of my arm. "If you walk out now, you leave with nothing," the stranger said, his voice barely audible over the swell of the orchestra below. "If you stay, you take everything. The choice is yours. But whatever you do, do not let them see you cry." I stared at him, my breath coming in ragged gasps. How did he know my name? And why was he stopping me? "Who are you?" I hissed, trying to pull away. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and handed me a small black USB drive. He thinks he's playing a game of chess. He doesn't realize you're the one who owns the board. Go to the powder room. Fix your face. Walk back down there and smile at him. Can you do that, Megan? My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Down below, I saw Kevin pull away from her, laughing, smoothing his tie as if he hadn't just set our world on fire. He looked happy. He looked relieved. He thought he had gotten away with it. I looked at the USB drive in my palm. It felt heavy. It felt like power. I realized then that the woman who walked into this ballroom tonight, the loyal, quiet, supportive wife who sacrificed her own career to build his, was dead. She died the second his lips touched hers. I took a deep breath, the cold air stinging my nose. I looked the stranger in the eye. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. The stranger gave a faint, chilling smile. "Because Kevin took something from me, too, and I've always preferred a poetic ending." He let go of my arm and vanished into the crowd before I could say another word. I was left standing there, the weight of 10 years of lies pressing down on me, and a tiny piece of plastic that promised a way out. I looked back down at the dance floor. Kevin was looking for me now, putting on his loving husband mask. He waved, signaling for me to come down. I have to know, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you're feeling the tension already, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps me bring more of these stories to life. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happened when I walked back down those stairs and looked my husband in the eye. I walked into the powder room, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. The marble was too white, the lights too bright. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Megan. The name felt like a relic. I leaned over the sink, gripping the porcelain until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to heave. I wanted to tear the silk dress off my body because he had bought it for me, and now it felt like a uniform for a role I never signed up to play. "Stay calm," the stranger had said. I took a shaking breath and pulled a makeup wipe from my clutch. I erased the smudge of mascara under my left eye. I reapplied my lipstick, a deep, defiant red. I looked at the black USB drive sitting on the counter. It looked so innocent, just a sliver of plastic and metal. But according to that man, it was a detonator. What could be on it? Kevin was a senior partner at a top-tier firm. He dealt with high-level contracts, mergers, and acquisitions. He was the golden boy. He always talked about integrity and the grind. But the way he had held Cassandra, that wasn't a sudden spark. That was a long-burning fire. I tucked the drive into the hidden inner pocket of my clutch and straightened my shoulders. I had spent a decade being the woman behind the man. I had edited his proposals, managed his schedule, and even turned down a promotion at my own firm 5 years ago because he said, one of us needs to be available for the house. I had been his foundation, and he had treated me like a doormat. I walked back out into the gala. The music seemed louder now, the laughter of the guests grating like sandpaper. I scanned the room and found him. Kevin was standing near the buffet, laughing at something a board member said. Cassandra was right there, her hand ghosting near his arm, claiming him without touching him. I felt a surge of pure, icy adrenaline. There you are, Kevin said as I approached. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't flinch. I thought I lost you. Where have you been, honey? Just fixing my face, I said, my voice steady. It was the best acting performance of my life. It's a big night. I wanted to look perfect for you. Cassandra smiled at me. It was a shark's smile. You look lovely, Megan. Kevin is so lucky to have such a supportive wife. The way she said supportive sounded like a slur, like she was calling me a piece of furniture. I think we're both lucky, I replied, looking her straight in the eyes. Kevin has a way of getting exactly what he wants. Don't you, darling? Kevin laughed, a little too loudly. That's my girl. Listen, the CEO wants to do a toast for our anniversary in a few minutes. Are you ready? I've never been more ready for anything, I said. As he walked away to talk to the caterers, I felt a vibration in my clutch. It was my phone. A text from an unknown number. Check the drive. Room 402. The hotel library is empty. 10 minutes. I looked around. The stranger was nowhere to be seen. My heart started that frantic drumming again. Room 402 was a small private study the firm had rented for the evening. I waited until Kevin was distracted by a group of investors. Then I slipped away again. I moved through the velvet-lined corridors of the hotel, my heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. Betrayal, justice, betrayal, justice. The library was dim, smelling of old paper and expensive bourbon. I found a laptop sitting on a desk in the corner. It was already turned on. No password. I took the USB drive out and plugged it in. My breath hitched as the folders populated the screen. They weren't just photos. They were spreadsheets, emails, scanned documents. I clicked on a folder labeled Project Phoenix. My eyes scanned the lines of data. I'm an analyst by trade, or I was before I became a housewife. It took me less than a minute to realize what I was looking at. Kevin wasn't just having an affair with Cassandra. They were embezzling millions. They were funneling money from the firm's pension fund into a shell company. And the most sickening part, the shell company was in my name. My signature was all over the documents, perfectly forged. If the authorities found this, Kevin and Cassandra would walk away clean, and I would be the one facing 20 years in federal prison. He didn't just cheat on me. He didn't just humiliate me. He was setting me up to be his fall girl. He was planning to trade my freedom for his new life with her. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the screen, reflecting in my eyes. I didn't feel like crying anymore. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard vacuum. He thought I was weak. He thought I was just the supportive wife who didn't understand the complexities of his business. He thought he could use me as a shield and then discard me. I heard the door creak behind me. I didn't close the laptop. I didn't move. Find what you were looking for. It was the stranger. He was leaning against the doorframe, a shadow among shadows. Why me? I whispered, staring at my forged signature on the screen. If you have this, why haven't you gone to the police? Because the police will only take their money, he said, walking closer. I want to take their souls. And for that, I need a partner who has access to Kevin's private accounts. I need someone he trusts. I looked at the screen, then back at the man. He doesn't trust me. He thinks he owns me. Even better, the stranger said. An invisible enemy is the most dangerous kind. He handed me a small piece of paper with a series of numbers on it. This is the offshore account where they're moving the next installment tonight. At midnight, during the final toast, if you can log into his laptop at the gala and redirect that transfer, they lose everything, not just the money. The evidence will point directly back to them, not you. I looked at the numbers. Midnight, 2 hours from now. And what do you get out of this? I asked. Justice for my sister, he said, his voice dropping an octave. She was the one Cassandra replaced. She didn't survive the fall they planned for her. I looked at the screen one last time. I thought about the 10 years I gave him, the dinners I cooked while he was working late, the dreams I shelved so he could shine. How do we start? I asked. The stranger smiled. It was the scariest thing I had ever seen. Go back down there, Megan. Be the perfect wife for 2 more hours. And when the music stops, we burn it all down. I walked back down those grand, sweeping stairs with the grace of a woman who had just found her spine. The USB drive was tucked back into my clutch, but its weight felt different now. It didn't feel like a secret. It felt like a weapon. The ballroom was a sea of false smiles and expensive perfume. I spotted Kevin immediately. He was standing in the center of a circle of men, his chest puffed out, holding a scotch like it was a scepter. When he saw me, his eyes did that thing they always did, a quick, proprietary sweep to make sure I looked the part, to make sure his accessory was polished. Everything okay, Evie? He asked as I slid back to his side. He wrapped an arm around my waist. Usually, that gesture made me feel safe. Now, it felt like being held by a snake. Perfect, I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. Just a bit of a headache. The lights are so bright tonight, aren't they? It's the price of success, darling, he whispered, kissing my temple. I looked over his shoulder and saw Cassandra watching us. She was standing by the bar, sipping something clear. When our eyes met, she raised her glass. It was a victory lap. She thought she was watching a wife who was too blind to see her own replacement. She didn't realize she was looking at the woman who was about to dismantle her entire world. Kevin, I said softly, you should probably check your phone. I saw a notification pop up on your jacket earlier, something about the midnight wire. He stiffened, just for a fraction of a second. A normal wife wouldn't have noticed, but I had spent 10 years learning the rhythm of his breathing. Oh, right. Work never stops, even on our anniversary, he said, forcing a chuckle. He pulled his phone out, his thumb flying across the screen. I watched the reflection in his glasses. He was checking the balance. The Project Phoenix account. I needed his login credentials. I knew his personal passwords. They were all variations of his high school football stats, but the firm's encrypted portal was different. It used a rotating secondary key. I needed that physical key, and I knew exactly where it was. It was in the inner pocket of his tuxedo jacket. You look a little warm, honey, I said, reaching up to stroke his lapel. Why don't you let me take your jacket? to the VIP cloakroom. You'll be much more comfortable for the toast." He hesitated. For a moment, the golden boy looked suspicious. "No, it's fine, Evie. I need to keep my phone on me." "Keep the phone." I smiled, my eyes wide and innocent. "Just give me the heavy wool." "You're sweating, Kevin. People are starting to notice." Vanity, it was his greatest weakness. He looked at a group of investors nearby, then back at me. He slipped the jacket off and handed it to me. "Quickly then. I need to be ready in 20 minutes. "I'll be right back." I promised. I walked toward the cloakroom, but I didn't stop there. I ducked into a service hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. I reached into the inner pocket. My fingers brushed against a small silver device, the RSA token. It was blinking with a 6-digit code. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the back of the device where the serial number was printed. Then I took a photo of the current code. Suddenly, the door at the end of the hallway creaked open. I froze, shoving the jacket behind my back. It was one of the catering staff, carrying a tray of empty flutes. He looked at me, confused. "Ma'am, the guest area is that way." I just needed a moment of quiet. I said, my voice trembling. "The music is a bit much." He nodded slowly and kept walking. I waited until his footsteps faded before I sprinted to the cloakroom, checked the jacket in, and took the plastic claim tag. I had the serial number. I had the current sequence. And thanks to years of helping Kevin fix his home office setup, I knew exactly which VPN the firm used. I looked at my watch. 11:10 p.m. 50 minutes until the final toast. 50 minutes until Kevin and Cassandra planned to hit a button that would transfer $5 million into a company with my name on it. And then I assumed they would discover the discrepancy and call the authorities. I found a quiet corner in the hotel's mezzanine, hidden behind a large fern. I opened my phone and messaged the stranger's number. "I have the token serial. What's the next step?" The reply came back instantly. "Go to the balcony of the library. There is a tablet hidden under the third chair from the left. I've preloaded the redirection script. You just need to input the token code when the transfer initializes at 11:55 p.m. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. There was no going back. If I did this, I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a participant. But as I looked down at the floor and saw Kevin laughing with Cassandra, his hand resting casually on the small of her back while he thought I wasn't looking, any trace of guilt vanished. They wanted to play a game with my life? Fine. I'd show them how a supportive wife handles the books. I made my way toward the library, but as I reached the door, a hand caught my shoulder. I gasped, spinning around. It was Kevin. His face was red, his eyes narrowed. "The cloakroom says you checked my jacket," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "Where is the silver key that was in the pocket, Megan? I know I felt it in there 10 minutes ago." My stomach dropped into my shoes. I had forgotten to put the token back in the pocket. It was still in my clutch. I don't know what you're talking about, Kevin," I stammered, backing away. "Don't lie to me," he growled, stepping into my personal space. "I saw you coming out of the service hallway. Give it to me. Now." I looked around. The hallway was empty. I was trapped. The air in the hallway felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Kevin stood over me, his shadow looming large against the velvet wallpaper. This wasn't the man who had whispered, "I do," to me in a sun-drenched garden 10 years ago. This was the man who saw me as a loose thread in his expensive suit, something to be trimmed away. "I'm waiting, Megan," he said, his voice dropping to that terrifying, calm register he used right before he fired someone. "The RSA token. It's not in the jacket. Where is it?" My mind raced. The silver device was sitting at the very bottom of my clutch, nestled against the USB drive. If he reached for my bag, it was over. He'd find the token, he'd find the drive, and I'd be lucky if I made it out of this hotel tonight. I dropped it, Kevin. I lied, my voice trembling. I forced a tear to well up in my eye, a trick I'd learned long ago when he'd yell about the house being messy. When I was taking your jacket off, something silver skittered across the floor in the service hallway. I tried to find it, but it rolled under the industrial fridge. I was just coming to find you to tell you. He stared at me, his eyes searching my face for a flicker of deceit. I kept my gaze soft, my lip quivering. I played the role of the clumsy, incompetent wife he had spent years molding me to be. You idiot, he hissed, the words hitting me harder than a slap. Do you have any idea how important that is? I have a window for a trade tonight. A window that closes at midnight. I'm sorry. I'll go back and look. I cried, making a move toward the service door. No, he snapped, grabbing my wrist. His grip was tight enough to leave a bruise. I don't have time for you to crawl around on your knees. Stay here. Don't move. I'll get security to open the kitchen. He shoved my arm back toward me and stormed off toward the ballroom, his pace frantic. I stood there for a second, my heart thundering so loud I thought it would burst my eardrums. I didn't have much time. As soon as he realized the token wasn't under that fridge, he'd come back for my bag. I didn't head for the kitchen. I bolted for the library. I burst through the heavy oak doors and sprinted to the balcony. It was dark, the only light coming from the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I counted the chairs. 1, 2, 3. I reached under the velvet cushion of the third chair, and my fingers brushed against cold metal. I pulled out a slim, high-end tablet. It flickered to life the moment I touched it. The screen was already open to a command terminal. Lines of green code were scrolling upward. In the center, a large red box blinked, awaiting secondary authentication key. I pulled the RSA token from my clutch. The numbers were cycling. 8, 4, 2, 1, 0. New code, 559201. I typed it into the tablet. The red box turned green. Access granted. Redirection script active. Waiting for source initialization. I leaned against the stone railing of the balcony, the cold night air biting at my skin. I looked down at the streets below. People were living their lives, completely unaware that a few floors above them, a 10-year marriage was being dismantled like a bomb. The stranger appeared from the shadows of the library. He didn't say a word, just checked the tablet. You did well, he said, his voice a low hum. Kevin is currently screaming at a janitor in the basement. He's distracted, but Cassandra isn't. She's looking for him, and she's looking for you. What happens at 11:55? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Kevin will realize the token isn't in the kitchen, the stranger explained. He'll panic. He'll try to bypass the security using his backup phrase, which will trigger a notification to the board of directors. While he's trying to explain that away, Cassandra will use her own terminal to force the transfer. She thinks she's being the hero, saving the deal. She doesn't know that your tablet is now the primary receiver. The money won't go to the shell company in your name. It will go to an escrow account held by the firm's internal auditors, tagged with their personal login IDs. They'll be caught red-handed. I said, they'll be caught in the act of theft. The stranger corrected. And the best part? The system will show that you were the one who flagged the suspicious activity. I looked at my watch. 11:40 p.m. Suddenly, the library doors swung open. The light from the hallway spilled across the carpet. Megan, it was Cassandra. She was standing there, her silhouette sharp and predatory. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the darkness. I know you're in here, she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Kevin told me what you did. Honestly, Megan, you've always been a bit of a liability, haven't you? Poor, sweet, useless Megan. I tucked the tablet behind my back, pressing it against the stone railing. The stranger was gone, vanished into the shadows behind a bookshelf. I was alone with the woman who wanted my life. I was just getting some air. "Cassandra," I said, stepping forward into the light. "It's a long night." "It's about to get a lot longer for you," she said, walking toward me. She stopped just inches away, the smell of her expensive perfume cloying. "Kevin is done with the games. After tonight, he's filing for divorce. He's already got the papers drawn up. You'll get nothing. Not the house. Not a cent of alimony. You're being erased. Honey." She reached out and patted my cheek. It was the most condescending gesture I had ever experienced. "Now," she whispered, her eyes turning ice cold, "give me the bag. I know you have the token." I looked at her, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel afraid of the people Kevin surrounded himself with. I felt pity. "You really think he loves you, don't you?" I asked. Cassandra laughed. "He loves power, and I am power. You're just a memory he's trying to forget. If you want the bag, Cassandra, you'll have to take it," I said, stepping back toward the edge of the balcony. She lunged for me, her face contorted with rage. But as she grabbed for the strap of my clutch, my phone in my other hand buzzed. 11:45 p.m. The look on Cassandra's face was almost worth the decade of misery. Her fingers were inches from my clutch when the sudden, sharp chime of her own phone echoed through the library. She froze, her hand still hovering in the air. She pulled her device from her waistband, her brow furrowing. I didn't need to see the screen to know what was there. The stranger script had just sent a pre-authorization alert to her device, a fake prompt designed to make her believe the transfer window was opening early. "What is this?" she hissed, her eyes darting between me and the screen. "Kevin said 11:55. Maybe he's tired of waiting for you to lead," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Or maybe he realized that in a world of sharks, you're just bait." She snarled, turning away from me to frantically type on her phone. "He wouldn't dare start without me. That money is mine as much as his." "Is it?" I asked, stepping closer, because the documents I saw earlier, the ones with my forged signature, only mentioned one beneficiary. "Kevin, you aren't even in the fine print. Cassandra, you're just the one holding the smoking gun." The seed of doubt is a powerful thing. I watched it sprout in her eyes. She knew Kevin. She knew he was a man who would step over his own mother for a corner office. Why would she be any different? "You're lying," she whispered, but her hands were shaking. "You're just a housewife. You don't know how these things work. I know that Kevin's backup password is his high school jersey, number followed by the year he met you. I lied perfectly. And I know he's in the basement right now, not looking for a key, but looking for a way to lock you out of the server." Cassandra didn't wait to hear another word. She turned and sprinted out of the library, her heels clicking like gunfire against the marble. She was headed for the gala floor, headed for Kevin. The stranger stepped out from behind the bookshelf, his expression unreadable. That was a risky move. If she had checked the logs, she would have seen the script was external. "She's too arrogant to check the logs," I said, my heart finally slowing down. "She thinks she's the smartest person in every room. People like that are the easiest to trip." I looked down at the tablet. The progress bar was at 40%. The source initialization was beginning. Kevin, panicked by Cassandra's sudden confrontation, was likely logging in right now to prove his loyalty. "We need to get back to the ballroom," the stranger said. "The toast is about to begin. You need to be standing next to him when the notification hits the big screen." "The big screen?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "I didn't just redirect the money, Megan," he said, handing me a small remote. "I redirected the gala's presentation feed. At midnight, instead of a slideshow of your 10 years of happiness, the board and every investor in that room is going to see the Project Phoenix spreadsheets. and they're going to see the login IDs used to access them. My breath hitched. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a public execution of his reputation. He'll know it was me. I whispered. Let him, the stranger replied. By the time he figures it out, your bags will be in the car. I've waiting outside. The evidence will be with the auditors, and you will be the whistleblower who saved the firm millions. I took the remote. It felt light, but it held the power to vaporize the life I had known. I walked out of the library and back toward the noise. The ballroom was reaching a fever pitch. The band was playing a triumphant song. Waiters were circulating with fresh glasses of the most expensive champagne. I found Kevin at the foot of the stage. He looked disheveled. His tie was slightly crooked, and his face was flushed. Cassandra was standing 5 feet away, her arms crossed, glaring at him with a look that could melt steel. "Megan, where have you been?" Kevin barked, grabbing my hand. He didn't even look at me. He was looking at the CEO, who was climbing the stairs to the microphone. "We're on in 2 minutes." "I'm right here, Kevin," I said, leaning in close so only he could hear. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." He looked down at me then, and for a split second, I saw it, a flicker of genuine confusion. Maybe it was the way I was smiling, or maybe he finally sensed the ice in my veins. "Ladies and gentlemen," the CEO's voice boomed over the speakers. "If I could have your attention, tonight is about more than just business. It's about the foundations that make business possible. It's about partnership." Kevin straightened his back, pulling me closer to his side. He looked out at the crowd, the picture of a successful, loved man. 10 years ago, the CEO continued. Kevin and Megan said, "I do." And tonight, we celebrate that decade of devotion. "Kevin, Megan, please come up." As we walked up the steps, I felt a vibration in my clutch. 11:58 p.m. The transfer was starting. The tablet in the library was doing its work. I looked out at the sea of faces, the people who had looked through me for years, treating me like a ghost. I saw Cassandra in the front row, her phone gripped in her hand, waiting for her win. The CEO pointed to the massive 20-foot LED screen behind us. "Let's take a look at the journey this incredible couple has taken." The lights dimmed. Kevin leaned over and whispered, "I hope you like the photos I picked. Evie, I spent a lot of time on this." "I know you did, Kevin," I whispered back, "but I think everyone is going to find the real data much more interesting." He froze. "What did you say?" I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen. The ballroom went silent as the giant screen flickered. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but a black void. I could feel Kevin's heart racing through the arm he had wrapped around me, a desperate, frantic thudding. He was smiling for the cameras, but his grip was starting to hurt. Then, the first image appeared. It wasn't our wedding photo. It wasn't a picture of us on vacation in Tuscany. It was a crystal-clear, high-definition scan of the Project Phoenix charter. My name was at the top in bold, black letters. Beneath it, the forged signature I had seen in the library was magnified until every shaky stroke of the pen was visible to the entire room. "What is this?" the CEO muttered, stepping back from the podium. "Kevin, is this a joke?" Kevin's face went from flushed to a sickly, ashen gray in 3 seconds. I don't know. There must be a glitch in the file." "Megan, what did you do?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, my hands clasped in front of me, watching the screen. The script moved to the next slide. It was a split-screen view. On the left, a live ledger of the firm's pension fund. On the right, a terminal window showing a transfer in progress. The numbers were moving so fast they were a blur of green, but the destination account was highlighted in red. It didn't lead to my shell company. It led to a secure vault labeled Internal Audit Holding Evidence Locker. "My God," someone in the front row gasped. "That's the retirement fund." The room erupted into a low, terrifying hum of whispers. These weren't just random guests. These were the people whose money was currently being moved on that screen. Kevin turned toward the tech booth, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Turn it off. Cut the power. Now." But the stranger had done his job well. The system was locked. Then came the final blow. The screen shifted one last time. It showed the login timestamps. User D_Thomas. Time 23 hours 55 minutes and 4 seconds. User C_Vance_CO_office. Time 23 hours 56 minutes and 12 seconds. The room turned as one to look at Cassandra. She was backed against a marble pillar, her face a mask of pure terror. She looked at Kevin, then at the screen, then at the exits. But the security team, the men who usually worked for her, were already moving toward her, their expressions grim. "Kevin, you promised." Cassandra shrieked, her poise finally shattering. "You said she was the one who would take the fall. You said the accounts were airtight." The silence that followed her outburst was deafening. She had just confessed in front of 300 witnesses and a dozen recording devices. Kevin turned to me, his eyes wide and wild. He looked like a cornered animal. "Megan, tell them. Tell them you handled the finances. Tell them this was your idea. I did this for us, for our future." He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me slightly. "Help me. Tell them I'm innocent." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I didn't see the brilliant executive or the man I had loved. I saw a small, pathetic thief who was willing to let his wife rot in a cell so he could buy a faster car and a younger mistress. I reached up and slowly removed his hands from my shoulders. "The thing about being a supportive wife, Kevin," I said, my voice carrying perfectly through the microphone still live on the podium, "is that I noticed everything. I noticed the late nights. I noticed the hidden folders. And I especially noticed when you started using my name to cover your crimes." I leaned in, whispering the final words just for him. "Happy anniversary, Kevin. I'm taking the house. You can keep the handcuffs." The CEO stepped forward, his face like stone. "Kevin Thomas, Cassandra, security will escort you to the private offices until the police arrive. Do not resist." As the guards closed in, Kevin lunged for me, a string of curses falling from his lips. But he was tackled before he could get close. The golden boy was pinned to the expensive carpet, his face pressed against the very floor he thought he owned. I didn't stay to watch them lead him away. I turned and walked off the stage. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. No one looked through me anymore. They looked at me with a mixture of awe and genuine fear. I walked straight out of the ballroom, down the hall, and toward the main entrance. The stranger was waiting by a black sedan. He held the door open for me. "The files are already with the authorities," he said, "and the divorce attorney I retained for you is waiting for your call. You're free, Megan." "Where are we going?" I asked, sliding into the leather seat. "Wherever you want," he said, closing the door. "For the first time in 10 years, you're the one driving." As the car pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the hotel. The blue and red lights of police cruisers were already reflecting off the gold-trimmed windows. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Massive embezzlement plot foiled at anniversary gala. Wife of senior partner credited as whistleblower. I turned the phone off and leaned back. The revenge was sweet, but the silence was better. The luxury sedan was a tomb of silence as we sped away from the flashing lights. I watched the city skyline move past the window, a blur of silver and gold. For a decade, I had lived in a gilded cage, my worth measured by how well I polished Kevin's image. Now, that image was a pile of ash in the middle of a ballroom floor. You look remarkably calm for someone who just blew up their life, the stranger remarked from the front seat. He didn't turn around. He just watched the road. I didn't blow up my life, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. I just stopped holding the building up while Kevin kicked out the supports. He blew it up. I just took the exit. I pulled my phone back out. I had dozens of missed calls. My mother, who always told me I was lucky to land a man like Kevin. My sister-in-law, who used to mock my simple dresses. Kevin's mother, who treated me like a glorified maid. I blocked them all. Every single one. There's a safe house in the hills, the stranger said. Everything is in your name. It was part of the settlement I negotiated using the data from the shell company. Kevin signed the deed over months ago, thinking he was hiding the asset from the firm. He didn't realize he was actually signing his own eviction notice. I closed my eyes. The level of planning this man had put into Kevin's downfall was staggering. Why did your sister matter so much to you? I asked quietly. The car slowed down at a red light. I saw his knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. She was Kevin's first project. She was the analyst who actually built the algorithm he uses. He stole the code, broke her heart, and then had Cassandra blackball her from the industry. She couldn't handle the darkness he left her in. Kevin doesn't just use people, Megan. He consumes them. He didn't consume me, I whispered. No, the stranger said, looking at me through the rearview mirror. You were the one thing he couldn't digest. You were too smart. That's why he tried to frame you. He was afraid of you. When we reached the house, it was a minimalist masterpiece of glass and stone. I walked inside, the lights flickering on automatically. On the kitchen island sat a single manila envelope. I opened it. Inside were the divorce papers, already signed by a judge. Because of the criminal charges and the evidence of the shell company being used for fraud against me, the morality clause in our prenuptial agreement had been triggered. I didn't just get half. I got it all. The penthouse, the cars, the investments he thought he'd protected. He was going to prison with nothing but the clothes on his back and a mountain of debt to the people he had robbed. I sat on the floor of the empty living room, the moonlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Kevin's wife. I wasn't an accessory. I was Megan, and Megan was rich, free, and dangerous. But the story wasn't over. At 3 a.m., my laptop chimed. A secure video call request. I clicked accept. Kevin's face appeared on the screen. He was in a holding cell, his hair matted, his expensive shirt torn at the collar. He looked like a ghost. Behind him, I could hear the sounds of a chaotic precinct. Megan, he wheezed, pressing his face toward the camera. You have to help me. You have to tell them the USB drive was yours. Tell them you did it all. I'll pay you. I have a hidden account in the Caymans. 3 million. It's yours. Just get me out of here. I looked at him, and I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Just a profound sense of boredom. The Caymans account. I asked. The one with the password quarterback 88. Kevin's eyes went wide. How do you know that? I emptied it an hour ago, Kevin, I said, leaning closer to the camera. I donated every cent to the pension fund you robbed. I'm the hero of the story, remember? And the hero doesn't help the villain escape. You bitch, he screamed, his face contorting with a rage that finally showed his true self. I made you. You were nothing before me. No, Kevin, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I was the one who made you, and now I've unmade you. Goodbye. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was beginning to rise over the city. A new day, a new life. I had one more thing to do, one final move that would ensure Kevin and Cassandra would never see the light of day again. I picked up the phone and dialed the auditor's private line. It's Megan, I said. I have the rest of the encryption keys. Let's finish this. The morning sun didn't just bring light, it brought a reckoning. By 9 a.m., the news was no longer just about a foiled plot. It was a bloodbath. Every major financial outlet was dissecting the Project Phoenix files I had handed over. Kevin and Cassandra weren't just facing embezzlement charges anymore. The auditors had found the breadcrumbs I left, the trail leading to their attempts to frame me. In their arrogance, they had left digital fingerprints all over the forgeries. Every time Kevin had used my laptop to work late, he was actually building the gallows he'd eventually hang from. I spent the morning in my new home watching the drama unfold on a silent TV screen while I sipped a cup of coffee that actually tasted like freedom. I saw footage of Cassandra being led out of the precinct in handcuffs, her designer dress stained and her face hidden behind her hair. She looked small. She looked ordinary. And then came Kevin. He was being moved to a federal transport van. He caught the eye of a camera, and for a split second, he looked terrified. He knew that even if he survived the legal system, he was a pariah. In his world, reputation was currency, and he was now worth less than zero. I didn't feel the need to gloat. The silence of the house was my victory. The stranger called me one last time that afternoon. The board has officially cleared your name. Megan, he said, they're actually discussing offering you a consultant position to help restructure their security protocols. You've become quite the legend in the last 12 hours. I think I'm done with the corporate world for a while, I said, looking out at the mountains. I have 10 years of my own life to catch up on. Fair enough, he replied. But remember, if you ever decide to play the game again, you know where to find me. I hung up and walked into the bedroom. I opened a small jewelry box Kevin had given me for our 5th anniversary. Inside was a diamond necklace worth more than most people's houses. I looked at it and saw the chains it represented. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything that smelled of his success. I took the box down to a local charity shop an hour later. I dropped it on the counter and walked away without asking for a receipt. That evening, I sat on my balcony and watched the stars. I realized that for 10 years, I had been the supportive wife because I was afraid of my own power. I had let Kevin lead because I thought that's what love looked like. I was humiliated and disrespected. Not because I was weak, but because I was waiting for him to be the man he promised he was. But he wasn't that man, and I wasn't that woman anymore. The revenge wasn't just about the money or the prison cells. It was about the moment I looked in the mirror and finally saw someone I respected. Kevin thought he was erasing me, but all he did was rub away the charcoal to reveal the diamond underneath. He's in a cell tonight, wondering where it all went wrong. I'm under the stars, knowing exactly where it all went right. If you've ever felt underestimated or pushed aside by someone you trusted, let this be your sign that the comeback is always stronger than the setback. Justice was served. But I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you found that USB drive? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to Whispered Wrongs. Your support allows me to keep telling these stories of the people who finally find their voice. And if you're ready for another story of a power shift you won't see coming, click the video on your screen right now. You won't believe what happened when this quiet daughter was pushed too far. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay calm. Your time is coming.